There is a secret that controls your life. It controls your success or failure, your confidence or fear, your progress or stagnation. And the strangest part? Most people never realize it exists. They wake up every day, live on autopilot, and wonder why life never changes. Why they work hard but remain stuck. Why dreams slowly turn into regrets. Earl Nightingale called this truth the strangest secret. Not because it was mysterious, but because it was obvious and still ignored. He said, "We become what we think about." That single sentence is not motivation. It is a law that controls your life, whether you believe in it or not. When Earl Nightingale observed society, he saw something disturbing. Most people were alive but not awake. They were busy but not progressing, working but not building, moving but not going anywhere. They followed routines created by others, accepted limits they never questioned, believed stories they never verified. Earl noticed that people didn't fail because they were weak. They failed because they were unaware of how their mind worked, unaware of how thoughts shaped actions, unaware of how repetition created destiny. And because they were unaware, their lives were controlled by accident instead of intention. Earl Nightingale explained that the human mind is the most powerful tool ever created, but it comes with one condition. It obeys orders. It doesn't argue. It doesn't judge. It doesn't decide right or wrong. It simply executes. Whatever you think about consistently, your mind accepts as truth. Think about fear. It creates hesitation. Think about failure. It creates avoidance. Think about success. It creates movement. The mind does not create results randomly. It follows instructions. And most people are giving it the wrong instructions every day. From the moment you wake up, your mind begins receiving input, news, social media, complaints, excuses, other people's fears. Without realizing it, you allow external voices to program your internal world. Earl Nightingale warned, if you don't take control of your thinking, someone else will. And that someone else doesn't care about your dreams. This is why most people live lives they never chose. Not because they had no potential, but because they never guarded their thoughts. One of Earl Nightingale's most powerful observations was this. Most people are drifters. They don't decide their future. They let it happen. They say, someday I'll change. Someday I'll start. Someday things will be better. But someday never comes. Earl said, a man without a goal is like a ship without a rudder. Such a ship doesn't reach a destination. It is carried by currents, by storms, by chance, and eventually it crashes. According to Earl Nightingale, the moment life changes is not when circumstances change. It is when thinking changes. The moment you decide what you want, the moment you write it down, the moment you focus on it daily, that decision sends a command to your mind. From that moment on, your mind begins searching for ways to achieve it. You notice opportunities you ignored before. You hear ideas you never heard before. You develop confidence you never had before, not because the world changed, but because you did. Earl called negative thinking an invisible prison. No walls, no chains, yet millions are trapped. I'm not smart enough. I don't have connections. I was born unlucky. These thoughts repeat quietly, day after day, until they become beliefs, and beliefs become behavior. Earl said something shocking. You can earn no more than your thinking allows. That means your limits are not outside. They are inside. This secret is strange because it is simple, and simple truths are often ignored. People search for complicated systems, complex strategies, shortcuts, but the foundation remains unchanged. Thoughts, actions, habits, life change the first, and everything else follows. Ignore it and nothing changes. Earl Nightingale believed that understanding the mind was only the first step. The real transformation began when a person learned how to reprogram it, because knowing the truth is not enough. Truth must be practiced, repeated, lived. Most people hear powerful ideas, feel inspired for a moment, and then return to the same thinking patterns. Earl warned against this trap. He said, knowledge without action is useless, and that is why so many people remain stuck, not because they lack information, but because they lack application. Earl Nightingale taught that the mind learns through repetition, not through intensity, not through emotion, but through consistency. You don't become successful by one strong thought. You become successful by the same thought repeated daily. That is how habits are formed. That is how identity is shaped. Earl explained it like this. Whatever you think about, talk about, read about, and listen to eventually becomes part of you. This is why negative environments are dangerous. This is why negative people drain energy. This is why constant exposure shapes destiny. Your mind is always learning. The question is, what is it learning from you? Earl Nightingale made a clear distinction between the conscious and subconscious mind. The conscious mind decides. The subconscious mind executes. The subconscious does not reason. It does not analyze. It simply follows patterns. If you repeat repeatedly tell yourself, "I can't do this," your subconscious accepts it as a command. If you repeatedly tell yourself, "I will find a way," your subconscious begins working toward solutions. Earl said, "Your subconscious mind makes no judgments. It accepts what you feed it." This means your inner dialogue is shaping your future silently every single day. One of Earl Nightingale's most practical teachings was the power of written goals. He strongly believed that a goal written down is a message sent directly to the subconscious mind. When you write a goal, you are no longer drifting, you are directing. Earl advised people to write their goal clearly, read it daily, visualize it already achieved. This daily repetition conditions the mind. It begins filtering information, attracting ideas, noticing opportunities, not by magic, but by focus. Earl Nightingale rejected the idea of overnight success. He believed success was the result of small, disciplined actions repeated over time. He said, "Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal." Progressive, step by step, day by day. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. Discipline bridges that gap. Motivation fades. Emotion fades. Discipline remains. Responsibility, the turning point. One of Earl Nightingale's hardest truths was responsibility. He believed that until a person accepted responsibility, they would remain powerless. He said, "You are where you are because of your own choices." This statement angers many people because it removes excuses, but it also does something powerful. It returns control, because if your choices created your life, your choices can change it. Responsibility is not blame, it is power. Earl observed that most people live far below their potential, not because they are incapable, but because they never commit. They try, they experiment, they hesitate, but they never decide. Earl believed that decision was the doorway to a new life. Once you decide, your behavior changes, your standards rise, your excuses disappears. Earl Nightingale emphasized guarding the mind. What you read, what you listen to, who you spend time with. He advised people to read something positive daily, limit negative news, surround themselves with growth-oriented ideas, because the mind reflects what it consumes. A poisoned input produces a poisoned output. Earl believed the reason most people never change is comfort. They prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar growth. Change requires effort, attention, discipline, but comfort requires nothing, and comfort slowly kills ambition. Earl Nightingale believed that fear was not natural, it was learned. A child is born curious, fearless, exploring, but slowly, through repetition, through warnings, through criticism, fear is installed. Be careful, what if you fail? That's unrealistic. People like us don't do that. Earl said these sentences quietly shape a prison inside the mind, not made of bars, but of beliefs. Earl Nightingale warned that society trains people to conform, not to think. From an early age, people are taught, follow the crowd, seek approval, avoid standing out, but the crowd is rarely successful. Earl observed that if success were easy, everyone would have it, yet only a small percentage ever achieve financial freedom, inner peace, or purpose. Why? Because they think differently. Earl believed the greatest controller of human behavior was fear of failure, not failure itself, but the fear of being judged. People avoid new paths because they fear embarrassment. They avoid dreams because they fear disappointment. Earl said, "The fear of criticism is the most paralyzing fear of all. This fear keeps people average, safe, invisible, and invisible people are easy to control." Earl Nightingale taught that freedom begins with awareness. Once you realize fear is learned, you can unlearn it. Once you see conditioning, you can question it. He encouraged people to ask, "Who taught me this? Is this belief really true? Does this belief serve my future?" Most beliefs collapse under honest examination. Earl observed that most people follow a script they never wrote. Go to school, get a job, survive the week, repeat. But a few people pause, reflect, and ask, is this all? Those people step onto a different path, not an easy one, but a meaningful one. Earl Nightingale redefined courage. No, courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of fear. Every successful person feels fear. The difference is they don't obey it. Earl said, fear is a signal, not a stop sign. It signals growth, expansion, change. Earl believed every life has a turning point, a moment when a person either retreats into comfort or steps into growth. That moment often looks small, but it determines direction. Most people people turn back. A few move forward. Those few change their lives. Earl stressed that mental freedom requires discipline. You cannot consume negativity all day and expect clarity at night. He advised replacing passive consumption with intentional learning, books, lectures, ideas that stretch the mind, because growth is not accidental, it is chosen. Earl believed most people never wake up because distraction is comfortable. Entertainment numbs discomfort. Routine dulls curiosity. That busyness replaces purpose. People confuse activity with progress, but movement without direction leads nowhere. Earl described the awakened individual as someone who thinks independently, sets personal goals, takes responsibility, acts with intention. This person is rare, but powerful, because they are no longer controlled by fear, by the crowd, or by circumstances. They are guided by purpose. At this stage, Earl reminded listeners, you become what you think about, not occasionally, but consistently. If you think fear, you become limited. If you think growth, you expand. The mind does not argue, it obeys. Earl Nightingale called it the dominant idea, the one thought that occupies your mind more than any other. Not the thought you have once, but the thought you return to again and again and again. That idea quietly shapes your decisions, your habits, your confidence, and ultimately, your destiny. Earl explained that the mind works like fertile soil. It does not judge the seed. It does not question. It simply grows what is planted. Plant fear, and fear grows. Plant belief, and belief expands. The soil does not care whether the seed is good or bad. It only responds to repetition. Most people never consciously choose their dominant idea. They inherit it from parents, from teachers, from society, from past failures. I'm not good enough. I'm too late. This is just how life is. These ideas replay silently until they feel like truth. But Earl warned, a belief repeated long enough becomes a fact, even if it isn't. Earl Nightingale taught that transformation begins the moment you choose a new dominant idea, not multiple goals, not scattered wishes. One clear direction, one central purpose. He advised writing it down clearly, specifically, without apology, because clarity gives the mind something to work toward. Earl often spoke about faith, not as blind belief, but as confidence in unseen outcomes. Faith is acting before evidence appears. It is trusting the process when results are not immediate. Every achievement in history was once unseen. Faith bridges the gap between intention and manifestation. Earl Nightingale emphasized visualization as a mental rehearsal of success. The mind cannot distinguish clearly between imagined experience and real experience. When you repeatedly imagine success, your mind begins to expect it. Expectation changes behavior. Behavior changes results. Visualization is not magic, it is preparation. Earl warned against impatience. Seeds do not sprout overnight, neither do ideas. The dominant idea works silently, beneath the surface, before results appear. Many people quit too early, not because the idea failed, but because they stopped feeding it. Consistency is the true test of belief. Earl said obstacles are not signs to stop. They are signs you are moving forward. Resistance appears when change is occurring. Comfort produces no resistance. Growth always does. Those who understand this do not retreat at difficulty. They adjust and continue. Earl Nightingale insisted that success is not an event, but a routine. Daily control of input. What you read, what you listen to, what you repeat internally. The mind is always learning. The question is, what are you teaching it? As the dominant idea grows, the old identity begins to feel uncomfortable. Old habits resist. Old friends may not understand. Old routines feel restrictive. Earl said this discomfort is necessary. You cannot become a new person without releasing the old one. The moment it starts working, there comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticed, when behavior begins to change. You speak differently. You act with more intention. You respond instead of react. This is when the dominant idea has taken root. Results soon follow. Earl reminded his listeners, you are not punished for your thoughts. You are rewarded by them. Life is not unfair. It is precise. It reflects your inner world with exact accuracy. Change the inner world, and the outer world must follow. With this understanding comes responsibility. No one else controls your results. No one else programs your mind. This realization is frightening, but liberating, because it means your future is changeable. Earl believed intention was the steering wheel of life. Without intention, life drifts. With intention, life moves with purpose. And purpose gives meaning to effort. Earl Nightingale said there comes a moment when a person no longer tries to change, they become the change. This is the identity shift. Not something you announce, not something something you force. It happens quietly, when your dominant idea has repeated itself long enough to feel natural. At first, growth feels like effort. You try to think differently. You try to act with discipline. You try to stay focused. But Earl explained that eventually, effort turns into identity. You no longer force confidence. You are confident. You no longer chase discipline. It becomes your default. This is when progress accelerates. Earl believed momentum was one of life's greatest forces. Small actions, done consistently, create a powerful forward pull. At first, progress feels slow, but once momentum builds, stopping becomes harder than continuing. This is why beginnings are difficult, and persistence is rare. Earl warned people not to rely on motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Emotion fluctuates, but discipline remains. Discipline is the decision made once and followed daily. It removes negotiation. It removes excuses. It creates stability. Successful people are not more motivated. They are more disciplined. Earl emphasized the importance of routine. Your life moves in the direction of your habits. Morning thoughts shape the day. Daily actions shape the year. Years of repetition shape a life. If you want a different future, you must design a different routine. Earl warned that progress is reversible. Without awareness, people drift back to old patterns. Comfort is seductive. Familiarity feels safe. That is why the mind must be guarded, especially during success, because complacency erodes growth more quietly than failure. Earl advised treating the mind like a valuable asset. Protect it from constant negativity, aimless entertainment, pessimistic voices, not because the world is evil, but because the mind absorbs everything. What you allow in eventually shows up in your life. When thought, emotion, and action align, something remarkable happens. Doubt weakens. Fear loses authority. Clarity strengthens. Earl described this as the unstoppable state, not because obstacles disappear, but because they no longer control direction. You move forward with calm determination. In this state, pressure does not crush you, it refines you. Challenges become feedback. Setbacks become lessons. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That question alone changes everything. Earl taught that results never rise above self-image. Once your self-image shifts, results follow automatically. You accept better opportunities. You demand better standards. You expect better outcomes. Life adjusts to match your expectations. Earl reminded people that time is either an enemy or an ally. For those without direction, time exposes weakness. For those with purpose, time multiplies effort. When you align thought with action, time becomes a powerful partner. One of the clearest signs of transformation, Earl said, is the end of approval seeking. You stop asking, will they like this? And start asking, is this aligned with my purpose? Freedom begins when validation is internal. Earl returned once more to the central truth. You become what you think about, not what you hope, not what you wish, but what you consistently focus on. The mind is not passive. It is productive, and it is always working. At this stage, life feels intentional, not rushed, not chaotic. You move with clarity. You choose deliberately. You respond calmly. This is not luck. This is alignment. Earl Nightingale believed that true success was not loud. It was quiet, steady, intentional. It was not measured only in money, but in meaning. Earl taught that success is not a destination. It is a daily practice. You do not wake up successful one morning. You wake up committed. Committed to thinking deliberately. Committed to acting with purpose. Committed to becoming better than yesterday. Success is the natural outcome of correct daily habits. Earl warned that power without purpose leads to emptiness. Many people achieve goals only to feel lost afterward. Why? Because achievement without meaning does not satisfy the human spirit. Purpose transforms effort into fulfillment. When you know why you act, endurance becomes effortless. Earl Nightingale believed the highest form of success was contribution. He said, the more you help others get what they want, the more you get what you want. This was not a strategy, it was a principle. Life rewards value. When your work improves lives, success follows naturally. Earl observed that struggling individuals often focus on themselves, their fears, their limitations, their doubts. But successful individuals shift focus outward. They ask, how can I solve a problem? How can I add value? How can I improve something? This shift changes everything. Earl emphasized long-term thinking as a defining trait of leaders. Short-term pleasure destroys long-term potential. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. Those who understand this build lives instead of chasing moments. Earl Nightingale often reminded listeners, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Impatience sabotages growth. Consistency sustains it. Success is not late. It arrives exactly when the person is ready. Earl admired calm confidence, not arrogance, not aggression, but quiet certainty. When you know your direction, you do not need to convince anyone. Your actions speak. Your results explain. Noise fades. Clarity remains. Earl warned against drifting. Drifting is living without intention, reacting instead of choosing, accepting instead of designing. Most people drift. Few design. Those who design their lives experience alignment instead of anxiety. Earl placed responsibility at the center of freedom. Blame weakens. Responsibility empowers. The moment you accept full responsibility for your thoughts, your choices, and your results, control returns to your hands. This is not pressure. This is liberation. Earl believed inner peace was the ultimate reward, not the absence of problems, but the presence of clarity. When thought aligns with purpose, conflict fades. You stop fighting life and start cooperating with it. In alignment, decisions feel natural. Effort feels meaningful. Progress feels inevitable. You are no longer scattered. You move in one direction with quiet determination. This is flow. Legacy begins in the mind. Earl Nightingale believed legacy does not begin at death. It begins in thought. The ideas you live by become the example others follow. Your life becomes a message. Whether intentional or not, someone is always watching. At this point, Earl returned again to the truth. You become what you think about daily, consistently, inevitably. Not once, not sometimes, always. Your thoughts are shaping your future right now. Earl left listeners with a quiet question. If you continue thinking the same way you think today, where will your life be in 5 years? That question alone has the power to change a life. Now, as everything comes together, thought, purpose, discipline, service, and peace, Earl Nightingale prepares to deliver the final realization: how mastering your thoughts allows you to live a life of clarity, impact, and lasting fulfillment. Earl Nightingale believed that mastery of life begins with mastery of thought, not control of events, not control of others, but control of the inner dialogue that never stops speaking. Earl reminded us, you cannot escape your own thoughts. They speak when the world is silent. They guide decisions when no one is watching. They shape actions before effort begins. This inner voice either becomes your greatest ally or your strongest enemy. And the difference is awareness. Earl said the strangest secret was never hidden. It was ignored. People search the world for answers, while the solution operates inside them every moment. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are instructions. Life does not happen to you. It happens through you. At every moment, you are choosing. Even when you think you are not, you choose what to focus on. You choose what to believe. You choose what to repeat internally. And those choices, small as they seem, are shaping your future. Earl emphasized, destiny is built quietly, daily, invisibly. Earl offered a simple practice. Each morning, ask yourself, what kind of person must I be today to move closer to my purpose? Not what must I get, but who must I become? This question shifts focus from outcomes to identity, and identity determines outcomes. Earl reminded us that time listens to consistency, not intention. Occasional effort is ignored. Daily alignment is rewarded. 5 minutes of focused thought, repeated daily, outperforms hours of scattered desire. Time magnifies direction. To move forward, Earl said, you must release the story you keep telling yourself. The story of limitation, the story of failure, the story of this is just who I am. That story is not truth, it is habit, and habits can be changed. Peace comes from alignment. Earl Nightingale believed peace was the natural result of alignment. When thoughts, values, and actions point in the same direction, conflict dissolves. You stop fighting yourself. And when inner conflict ends, outer struggle loses power. At the highest level, Earl said, you develop self-trust, not arrogance, not stubbornness, but calm confidence. You trust your judgment. You trust your preparation. You trust your direction. And when self-trust is present, fear has no authority. Earl believed that a transformed individual inevitably influences others, not by preaching, not by forcing, but by example. People notice clarity. They feel calm confidence. They sense purpose. Your life becomes proof. Earl was clear about one thing. No book, no speaker, no video can do this work for you. They can point the way, but walking the path is personal. Responsibility cannot be delegated, and that is why freedom is rare. Earl Nightingale closed with the truth. One final time. You become what you think about, not what you wish, not what you fear occasionally, but what you consistently allow to dominate your mind. That That is the law. And Earl, left us with one final question. Quiet, simple, powerful. What are you thinking about right now?